So now that we have our basic if function, let's do else and else if. So these are extra keywords that we can tack on if this doesn't run. So if that isn't true, then try something else, right? So we're just trying different things. The first value isn't what we wanted. So let's do else. So else is not actually going to have any smooth brackets. So it's basically saying if all else fails, do this. So whenever you run an if statement, something is always going to happen. So if the pool temperature is less than the temperature that we want, it's going to turn on the heater. Otherwise, so what would happen here? We'd probably just want to turn off the heater, right? So I can just copy that, paste that, turn off the heater. And that's going to work pretty good. So once it's below, when it's below 20, it's going to turn on the heater. Then the second we start getting above 20, it's going to turn off the heater. Or actually, if it gets to 20 itself, it's also going to turn it off. So that's what the else is. It's just a way of having a different scenario. So if this doesn't happen, do something else. Now we can actually make it even more complicated. So we can say else if. So what this is going to do is if this is not true, it's going to check something different. So it's going to say else if, let's say pool temp equals desired temp. Right, so our desired temp is 20. Once it gets to 20 on the dot, we are actually just going to turn off the heater. And we can do more than one else if. We can do as many as we want, and it's just going to keep going down the list, checking something until something returns true. So let's think of a bad scenario here. Let's say that for some reason the temperature jumped over top of 20, right? So let's say it got to 23 degrees, or even just 21 degrees. We have a problem now, because 21 is not less than the desired temp, and it's also not equal to the desired temp. It's actually too hot. So what we could do is we could say else if pool temp is greater than desired temp. And then we can just write, turn off the heater, the pool is getting too hot. And maybe here, pool is just right. So we've just got different scenarios, right? And you just have to think logically what's happening. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. It's just what you're trying to do and whether that's achieved. So you can kind of plug the numbers in and see if that works. So when we plug in the number 21, 21, is it less than the desired temp, 20? Nope, it's actually greater, so that's not going to run. So we're going to go to line 17 then, and it's going to say otherwise, is the pool temperature equal to the desired temperature? 21 does not equal 20. So we're going to go ahead down to line 21. Is the pool temperature greater than the desired temperature? Yep, 21 is greater than 20. So we're going to print this message. Now what we could do is we could actually have a very specific scenario, right? So maybe before we check all this, you could actually do a completely separate if statement. So this is just generally checking and turning on and off the heater. But let's say we wanted a warning. So let's say we had kind of like an alarm bell. So if the heater breaks and it just starts cranking up the heat way too hot, let's say the pool temperature goes up to, I don't know, 50 degrees Celsius, right? So it's getting really, really hot. You might just want to have a check just to make sure it doesn't get anything crazy. So we could do if pool temp is greater than, let's say, 30 degrees, right? I don't know, maybe 35, something like that. And then we could say console.log warning, the pool is way too hot, everybody out. Right? Then if this was a real life scenario, you might have like alarm bell dot turn on, something like that, right? So you'd actually have a physical device turning on when this is true. Now the cool thing about this is these are completely separate from each other, and you can just add a little bit extra space in there if you want, just to kind of visually see them different. So as our program goes down, it's going to start at the top, saying, okay, we've declared a few variables. It's going to ignore all this because that's a comment. It's going to come to line 23 or 13, sorry, and it's going to say, is the pool temperature greater than 35? So in this case, we actually have 50. So that is greater than 35. So this warning is going to go off. So we are going to have some alarm somewhere start to beep. But the cool thing is it's actually going to keep going, right? So even though it just ran that if statement, it found another. It said, oh, we got another if statement. So now it's going to say, is 50 less than the desired temperature? So it's obviously not going to turn on the heater, and the heater's probably already on anyways. So that's not going to run. But then it's going to check this. It's going to say otherwise, is 50, I think that's what we had, yeah, is 50 equal to the desired temperature, which is 20? So nope, 50 is not equal to 20. So it's not going to run that. So then it's going to get down to here. Okay, it's going to say, is 50 greater than the desired temperature? Yep, 50 is actually greater than 20. So it's going to turn off the heater. The pool is getting too hot. So let's actually run that, and you're going to see that two separate things are going to happen. Right, so we have this warning bell. That's going to go off. And we're also just going to have the heater shut off. So we could even write a comment, just so this is a little bit more clear what's going on. So maybe checks if the heater should be on or off, and maybe sets an alarm when the temp is greater than 35. So we've got two separate little blocks here, and they're both going to run separate from each other, which is good because we also have two different hardware devices, right? So this one's dealing with the alarm, this one is dealing with the heater. So there's lots of stuff you can do. You can kind of put them, make your own little if chains, and we could even do an else here. So maybe that should always be caught, right? It's either going to be less than, equal, or greater. So let's just say console.log, there appears to be an error with the heater logic, please inspect. Right, so you can always just tack an else at the end. So if you expect one of these to be caught and it isn't, this is just a good way that you can put in a little error message and it'll let you know that something's not happening how you think it'll happen. So these are the things that we can start to do with if statements. We can just do one if there, or we can even start to chain on these other conditions. So just checking different things if the first condition isn't true. Then remember, the second it actually returns true. So let's say this one's true. It's going to run this line of code, and none of this is going to run. This just, once it finds something, it's just going to jump out of this, and it's going to start going down here. So that's if else's, slightly more complicated, but a lot more useful, right? So you can start to build up your own application, and you can have different things happen based on what is going on.